All right, let's get started. Hey, Jack, how are you?
Doing good, Chris. Doing good.
Great. So, welcome to today's Omni Live. We're going to talk about the DBT and BI workflow. I'm Chris Merrick. I'm co-founder and CTO of Omni. Before we dive in, just want to let people know we're going to record this to share it around later. So, if you need to jump, you'll be able to see the recording. Also, if you have questions, we're going to keep an eye on the feed. So, send those questions in, and we will try to get to them at the end. So, just to get started. My name is Chris Merrick, CTO, co-founder of Omni. And one of the things I also did in my past life was I worked closely with the folks who originally built DBT. Actually, I was one of the first committers to the DBT project, and have actually been probably one of the longest running users of DBT. So DBT's in my DNA from day one. Jack, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, great to meet everyone. My name is Jack Sweeney. I'm a solutions engineer here at Omni. So I've been spending a lot of time in the field with our customers, with and without DBT, but mostly with, seeing a wide range of behavior there. But very excited to share a little bit more from the technical side today too, as we dive in with Chris, and we'll jump into a little bit of a demo later on as well to show some use cases off.
Yeah, and so Jack and I, like Jack said, like a lot of our customers use DBT. At this point, DBT is ubiquitous, right? It's saying you use DBT is like saying you breathe air. And it's been incredible to watch the growth of DBT as a project, as a community, as a company. It's just been unbelievable. And Jack and I sort of see this from two different angles. I talk to a lot of our customers and users about how they are using DBT and sort of how Omni as a product integrates with it and interacts with it. And Jack, of course, I mean, you probably work with it directly with some of our customers. Obviously, we use it internally as well. And so, yeah, Jack, do you have any other thoughts on how you've seen DBT?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, we definitely see it from a couple different sides, but from the field, what we've seen quite a bit with customers and just talking to other folks out there in the data world using DBT is there's a wide range of how folks are using it today. We see folks who are very heavy of everything being modeled in DBT, all the way up to folks who are doing very lightweight stuff in DBT and not using it a little more sparingly for things that are just materializing very heavy tables. What's been interesting is it seems like there's some accepted best practices, but continuing to see more and more patterns emerge of where folks are really driving towards is what they want to have as their end state, especially when it comes to the BI side of things.
Absolutely. Right. And like I said, so I have been using DBT from day one, but then also kind of had this interesting experience of starting Omni about 2 years ago. And as we started Omni, one of the things we were really cognizant of is the fact that DBT is ubiquitous and it's a great tool for doing in database modeling. And so one of the benefits you get is when you start a product with the paradigm already in existence, you get to sort of think about what's the right way to interact with DBT. And this is something that we thought a lot about. And one of the things we said from the get-go is that data modeling and querying, I think of them as just two sides of the same coin, right? Like when you're writing a query, you are modeling in some sense. And sometimes you might literally want to be reusing that model. Other times you might just be modeling a little calculation that you then throw away. And on the other hand, when you're building a model, I can remember building many DBT models where I had to go actually analyze the data as I was modeling to understand what my model was actually doing and producing. So I really think of modeling, querying, and analyzing as just two sides of the same coin. And as we built Omni, one of the things that we really are trying to optimize for is thinking of DBT and sort of the in-database model, and then also the sort of model within Omni, the BI tool, as sort of these two complementary pieces. And thanks, Jack, for flashing up this diagram. But we think of these things as a sort of a layer cake, and there's always going to be a database model, right? Like the data needs to exist in some form in the database. And again, with ubiquity of DBT, there's going to be additional models in the database that are curating that data, cleaning it, structuring it in the way folks want it to be structured. But then additionally, there's always a model in the layer above the database because querying is modeling. So sometimes in Omni, that's a sort of a semantic layer model that has a bit of structure. But if you're just writing SQL, it's also, there's some modeling in there as well. And so rather than, I think if you look at other tools, sort of tools that were built before kind of the DBT paradigm became so common, I think there's a lot of tools trying to own the data model and sort of be the one-stop shop for data modeling. And that's not really how we're thinking about Omni. Like, we rather think of Omni as sort of the top layer of the data model, but also a layer that needs to facilitate movement of the data model between the layers, right? Because sometimes, right, like we said, I might start querying and have no intent around data modeling in the moment that I'm writing my query. I'm just trying to answer a question, explore some data, but then realize, oh wait, okay, I've defined this calculation, I've defined the structure of a view, and I'm going to need to reuse this, and maybe I need to reuse it within my BI tool within Omni, or maybe I need to reuse it across sort of all of my data sets and sort of at a more foundational level in the database. And one of the things we are doing with Omni is trying to make that a very seamless transition, so that you can start modeling in sort of the kind of at the end user, like you can start modeling in our Excel-like interface even, and that model can then sort of progressively get promoted into a shared model within Omni, or it can go straight into DBT. And everything else within Omni just sort of updates and continues working seamlessly. So that's the workflow that we are trying to optimize for. It's really something that we think is kind of unique relative to how other people are thinking about DBT in the ecosystem. And at the end of the day, the goal there is make sure that the folks who are sort of spending most of their time in DBT are able to interact with the BI layer in the simplest possible way. And then at the same time, making sure that the folks who live in BI are able to get to data and do their jobs as quickly and efficiently as possible. So Jack, do you want to talk a little bit more about that and show us off a little bit about how we actually do that in Omni?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll go ahead and do here is I'll actually jump over to this other slide. And what we'll see here is really just that we have 4 main use cases where we can really talk about how DBT and Omni work together. And so the first here that we have on screen is really just how surfacing changes in DBT models within Omni can happen. Oftentimes when folks are working in DBT, we're very rapidly creating new columns, new tables, we're changing names of existing parts of models. There's a lot of things moving in flux and moving very quickly. A lot of BI tools don't do a great job of absorbing those changes though. So this can end up creating some duplicate work or some pain down the line of updating those column names or updating SQL queries underlying all of this. With Omni, all we have to do is push a button. We have a button for refreshing our schema. It'll pull all those data warehouse changes through automatically, unlike other tools that might require some more manual lift. And this can actually also be triggered via our API as well. So we have a way of automating this for a true hands-free experience from when you hit DBT build to push through all the way to have that data fresh and ready and waiting for you in Omni. The second really goes hand in hand with the first. This is about bringing any metadata along with you from DBT into Omni. So for things like view and field level descriptions, these are going to propagate through to Omni, preventing the need for any duplicate work that you might be doing already in DBT. So it really helps just cut down on any duplicativeness and save you a lot more time while still providing that value to your end users there as well. The third, which we'll dive into a little bit more via demo after this, is actually the ability to create net new DBT models from Omni. This is super important for 2 key reasons. The first is really when we're modeling data we're not familiar with, it can be really critical to touch and feel that data to understand what we're actually even looking at. I might not know the exact values for a field underneath it, especially if it's a table that's new to me, or if it's net new data from a new source that we're pulling in and I haven't really interacted with before. Working in Omni allows you to do just that, where I can really touch and feel it, and I can perform what we call like just-in-time modeling. So really incrementally, as Chris was alluding to, start to model these things out and decide where that needs to live, either within Omni itself or pushing it out to DBT very seamlessly through our integration. The second is really just kind of alluding to the last point I made there, is really that we often don't realize where something might need to live in terms of logic at time of creation. Things can start off as a nice ad hoc or one-off request, but really isolated business logic might need to be more widespread as time goes on. Those ad hoc analyses all of a sudden turn into a weekly, monthly, quarterly kind of requests from VPs or boards that might need some sets of data. The nice thing is that within Omni, we provide a lot of lightweight gestures to move these things fluidly around within the data model, making it nice and easy for you to get what you might need while still having the flexibility to create where you might want to and adjust that later on. The last piece here is really for ensuring minimal breaking changes as you move data from dev schemas to prod schemas within dbt. Oftentimes, BI layers are pointed at dbt prod environments. That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we want to use that production data, and that's what we've been vetting and testing and have ready to go. But with Omni, what we can also do is simultaneously point a branch back at a dbt dev schema. This is great because it lets us see how our changes impact the BI layer. We can proactively make bulk changes for things like field name changes, update columns, change all the references we might need to in a very scalable way. And then when we actually merge those changes at the dbt level, we can actually move in lockstep at Omni to merge those as well. So that way your end users have a really seamless experience with minimal breaking changes as you're moving from a development schema within dbt, shifting all that data into production, and makes for a nice experience at the BI layer as well, without having to go through an old process that might look something like move from dev to prod and then go check the BI layer very quickly and frantically for anything that might have broke and make the appropriate adjustments there. So those are 4 of the main use cases. With that, we're actually going to jump into a little bit of a demo here on the third item. And this is going to be use a particularly exciting example. So we actually interact with quite a lot of JSON data. And as folks may know, interacting with JSON data in SQL can be pretty messy. When it comes to unnesting the data, especially if you're not familiar with the blob or what might be within its contents, this can be pretty tricky, especially as these fields tend to be high velocity and might have a lot added to them over time too. With Omni, we can easily unnest the JSON using the UI, harden it at the dbt level, and do all of this without writing a single line of SQL. So this is huge for non-technical users because it enables them to interact with these fields in a way that they might not be able to otherwise. And for technical users, it's great because it provides a huge time savings. Frankly, time is probably better spent elsewhere than unnesting JSON and moving that into the dbt layer for a lot of folks. So let's go ahead and jump in. And I'll go ahead and I'll actually exit out of these slides here and we'll go over into Omni. And what we'll see here is a workbook in Omni where I've got a table pulled up. And what I can see in this table is I actually have this pages context JSON field. And what we can see when we click into this field is it has a couple different keys and values within it. So I can see that I've got a page initial referrer, a page initial referring domain, a page path, referrer, a referring domain, and a page search. This is great. As an end user, I might want to come in and interact and pull out this page path, but I don't know how. So I can scroll all the way to the right in our table here. And when I click on this field, I'll actually be able to see an option here that says create field from JSON. This will pop up in a little modal where I can actually come through and select the different items I might want in here, or even just select all of them all together. When I do this, I'll go ahead and hit create fields. This will actually open up additional fields in my JSON. So I can remove that raw from our query, and I'll go ahead and actually just pull in the individual columns where we can see these flowing through as we'd expect, as if they were just independent fields extracted from the JSON themselves. This is great because I don't actually need to go through any process as an end user to write the SQL to do this, or as a non-technical user to go look up how I might actually interact with JSON data in SQL and how I pull all that out. Now, one of the great things here is that, let's say I actually wanted to take this data, it's relatively small scale today, and we can see this just by adding a count to our table. If I go to the right, we can see that we've just got about, at most, 200 or so rows. But I just got a call from our marketing VP who just told me that this was a bit of a beta test that we were slowly rolling out to see how the functionality looked. And this is soon to be scaled up to several billion rows. Obviously, running this at query time is not something we want to do where we're running all these unnest JSON functions under the hood every single time we interact with this data. It'd be much better if this was just a nicely materialized table. So what started off out as more of an ad hoc analysis, I can actually now go to our model menu here, go into push to dbt, and I'll have an option here to give this dbt a file name, or sorry, this file this dbt file a name. And we can go ahead and just leave it as JSON demo. And down in the bottom right, we'll see a little toast pop up within Omni telling me my query has been pushed to my Git repo. I can go ahead and hit view changes to take a look at this. And I'll see that I have the option to merge this into my base branch, but I'll actually scroll down and I can see the SQL that Omni's written under the hood to produce all of this. This is great because as I can see, it went through and did all the casting or pulling out from JSON without me having to write any of this. I don't even have to understand under the hood how this might work, even though it would be useful too. What's super powerful here is now that we have this all in this pull request, this looks good to me. I can actually go ahead and create a pull request. But if you have other flows already set up for your Git repo, we can actually go ahead and move these through any formalized processes that you might already have in place since this is moving to your repo. So I can go ahead and merge this into my base branch here. And now when I go over to my dbt cloud IDE, I'll go ahead and refresh here. And I'll have the option to pull from remote to get an update here. And what we'll see here when I do this is our models will add in our JSON demo file. And we can now see, same as what we saw in the Git repo and same as what we saw in Omni, we now have the SQL written here where I can come in, run dbt build, and create this as its own table. So a very quick process just for creating and making all this data super accessible in a lot of ways. And really just wanted to show that off to make sure that you can understand how it's easy to go from without any lines of code, doing simple and powerful things in Omni and effortlessly moving them to dbt to be persistent in that warehouse layer. Obviously, there's quite a bit more to show about Omni and our dbt integration, but for the sake of today, we wanted to keep it short. I'll pause it there and I'll pass it back to Chris.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, and I think just to emphasize too that this is a sort of iterative process, right? So model gets pushed to dbt, and then you can add dimensions and other, you can sort of work on top of that model in Omni or in a query, and then sort of edit it and repeat the process. So, right, like a model's never done, and we want to really make sure that the workflow to update it is seamless because there shouldn't be any friction to make some of these little edits. So that's it for today on Omni Live. We do have some questions that came in on the chat. So let's read back one of these. So the question we have is, said refresh schema with a button or API call. Does that update the Omni model code or just the catalog that those models can pull from? It's actually updating the Omni model code, and so an interesting kind of added sort of strategy. Sort of Omni itself, in addition to sort of that layer cake of Omni sitting on top of dbt models. And there's actually sort of a layered set of models within Omni itself, and sort of the base set of models is we call the schema model, which is just a reflection of the data we're seeing in your database. So when you hit that refresh schema button, it's actually updating that base layer of model in Omni. And let's see, are there any other questions? Looks like that was it for the questions. So as Jack mentioned, there's lots more. If you want to get more information about Omni, about how we're thinking about dbt, if you just want to chat dbt with myself or with Jack, reach out, let us know, reach out on LinkedIn or on our website. And we've already written several blogs on this topic. We plan to be talking about it a lot because it's something we're thinking about a lot. And it's also something we're still in development on and want to talk with people about. So if you're interested, don't be shy. And thanks again, Jack, and everyone who joined, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Bye.